Florida a couple of hours ago. We'll show you a portion of what he had to say.
Two-minute warning, 2-minute warning. Please turn off all cell phones and pagers.
2 minutes, roll all decks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In earlier statements, we've emphasized the importance of achieving some finality to the election process, not just here in Florida, but of course for the nation as a whole. More and more we see uncertainty in financial markets, and we see uncertainty abroad. I believe that most observers, whether at home or abroad, are troubled by the prospect of seemingly endless counts and recounts until a candidate achieves the result he seeks. The vote in Florida was counted, and then it was recounted. Governor Bush was the winner of the vote. He was the winner of the recount. There have been no allegations of vote fraud, either in the count or in the recount. No fraud, just confusion of some individuals. Yet the Gore campaign refuses to accept the result. Instead, they have proceeded with demands for manual recounts in predominantly Democratic counties. Their selective application of the manual recount provision targeted counties to try to reverse the result of the election. Consider, for example, if you will, the 3 Broward County precincts selected by the Gore campaign for their test count. Precinct 1F, 1,308 votes for Vice President Gore, 62 votes for Governor Bush. Precinct 6F, 1,175 votes for Vice President Gore, 52 votes for Governor Bush. Precinct 6C, 1,071 votes for Vice President Gore, 19 votes for Governor Bush. This might lead someone to suspect that the Gore campaign was more focused on selectivity than on fairness. Even so, they only picked up 4 votes through this test manual recount, and the county canvassing board decided not to expand this 3rd vote count to all of Broward County. Now, having talked for days about letting the local officials act on recounts, the Gore campaign is trying to force Broward County officials to count yet again. Yesterday, the Secretary of State of Florida reiterated that Florida law unambiguously requires every county canvassing board to certify its election returns by 5 p.m. today. The Gore campaign, which placed great weight on Florida law when it thought that the provisions of Florida law served its tactics, does not like this Florida law. So they filed suit to block the application of the statute, and that case is working its way now through the courts. In sum, the Gore campaign has been unwilling to accept any finality after the vote, after the recount, after the manual recount tests in selective favorable counties, or even after larger selective manual recounts within the time prescribed by Florida statute. Indeed, the manual recount in Palm Beach County is at least the fourth count of these very same votes, because the county also undertook a third machine count. The American people want the parties to find a way to bring this election to an end. Therefore, we make the following proposal to the Gore campaign. Both sides should agree to accept the vote count of all the counties at the statutory deadline today, 5 p.m. In addition, both sides should agree to accept the overseas absentee ballots as of midnight Friday in accordance with the law. We have objected to the manual recount in Florida. The Gore campaign has objected to the statutory deadline in Florida. We are offering to accept the manual recount up to the time of the statutory deadline, if the Gore campaign will accept that deadline. If the Gore campaign accepts this proposal and drops its litigation, we will dismiss our lawsuit. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the courts will not decide this election. Many people around the country have urged both candidates to reach out to one another with a fair proposal to resolve this very divisive and unfortunate process. We are doing just that. We have had counts. We have had multiple counts. We've had multiple recounts and selective manual counts. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to bring this to a close, and we sincerely hope that this proposal will enable us to do so. Yes, sir.
I don't want to speak for the Gore campaign, but it seems to me that on the face of this compromise, if that's what it is, might be unacceptable to them because it locks in election results, which would presumably give Governor Bush the victory here in Florida and thus the presidency.
How can you say that? It locks in election results that would give Governor Bush the victory here in Florida. He's ahead by 380 votes, and there are any number of absentee votes, that overseas absentee votes, that will have to be counted on Friday. There's no assurance that he will win those votes. Traditionally, they have favored the Republican candidate, and we should say that. I've already said that. But there is absolutely no assurance. And so if you're suggesting that we take no risk by this proposal, I would argue with that rather strongly. Furthermore, if you've interpreted the proposal correctly, you understand that we are willing to accept the diminution in our vote by virtue of the manual counts that will have been concluded by 5 p.m. this afternoon. And when you take those votes away from 388 votes, we go into the overseas absentee balloting hopefully with still a very, very narrow lead, but it will be an extraordinarily narrow lead. So I think for them to reject it just on the grounds that it locks in a victory for us is simply not right. You follow up, sure. Absolutely.
The other compromise that's been suggested is that both sides agree to accept manual recounts across the state of Florida and agree that those results would be determinative of this election. Do you reject that possible compromise?
I reject that categorically, and let me explain why. It took 15 hours to count 4 precincts in Palm Beach County. There are 6,000 precincts in the state of Florida. It would take an inordinate amount of time to count 6,000 precincts manually. Furthermore, we have made very clear since we've been here our problem with the fundamentally flawed process of manual counting here, how it could lead to human error or even mischief. Those concerns are well known. But if you look at 6,000 counties, you talk about 15 hours to count 4 counties. This could very well back us up, right smack up, if not beyond, the December 18 date of the meeting of the Electoral College. And clearly that's not acceptable, not just to us, but to the American people, I would venture. Yes.
What makes you think that they would be interested in this? This is essentially the same offer you made the other day.
No, it's not the same offer I made the other day. Don't misunderstand that.
How is it different?
It's different in the sense that we are willing to accept the manual recount votes that will have taken place by 5 p.m. today. And we've already lost over 50 or so votes. We're ahead by 388. We've already lost 50. We would probably, perhaps, maybe, who knows, maybe we'll gain some. We might lose some more. It is not the same proposal. It is I hope you will look at it on its merits.
You brought up the markets as well. Are you concerned that A, there's an erosion of public support in the United States, but B, that this is extending into the financial markets and, you know, perpetuating your concerns earlier this week about the international arena as well?
You're darn right I'm concerned about what's happening in international markets, and I think we ought to all be concerned. And there ought to be some, you know, in every election you have to balance, I think, the interest in making sure you have a recount if necessary to make certain that the result is accurate and fair. We've had all those, but you got to balance that against the interest of finality. Why are the markets disturbed? Because they don't see any finality here. Why are some of our friends, and indeed probably some of our adversaries overseas, looking on this with great interest on the one hand and apprehension on the other? Because they don't see any end to this process. And you all out there don't see any end to it either. Nobody can come up right now and say, here's how it's going to end, here's when it's going to end, and we're making a proposal here that we think is very fair. And it should not be rejected out of hand. The idea that you're gonna have a manual recount of all of the state of Florida is crazy. It'll back us. All that would do is increase the uncertainty and increase the lack of any assurance that there would indeed be finality. Now I'll take one more question, then I got to run. I'll take you.
Secretary, and yet, by your own admission, you would hope that at the end of business today at 5 o'clock, you would come out even a small bit ahead, as you just said.
I'm sorry, even a small what?
You said you expect that you would hope that at the end of 5 o'clock today, you would come out at least a small margin ahead, would be able to hold a small margin for Governor Bush.
We have no assurance of that.
In addition, most Republicans have expressed some confidence that the overseas ballots would indeed favor Governor Bush because of the military, which they believe would vote largely for the governor. So, looking at those two facts, why would the Democrats accept this proposal?
Well, one reason they should accept the proposal is that it would be a compromise that both campaigns have entered into in good faith. It would take this process out of the courts, for one thing. And it would give some degree of finality to the process. And it doesn't constitute an automatic lock-in of a victory for us. They don't have to accept it. They can't, we can't make them accept it. They may keep asking for recount after recount after recount. But when is it going to end? I ask you, when is it going to end? Are we going to back it up to the Electoral College? Is that what they have in mind here? maybe we'd get to December 18 and there wouldn't be any certification of Florida's electors. Well, there are all sorts of crazy scenarios out there. I hope that's not what they have in mind. We do see what's happening in terms of the uncertainty out there, both here and abroad. And this is, I think, a forthcoming proposal. I hope they'll give it serious consideration. Thank you very much.
Secretary, Mr.
And now we go back to Capitol Hill for comments by Senate Minority